The silence inside a data center is deceptive. It is a cold, hum-filled silence that masks a chaotic, relentless violence of information. Inside the server racks of Mountain View or Council Bluffs, trillions of events are colliding every second. A user clicks an ad in Tokyo. A thermostat adjusts in Berlin. A stock trade executes in New York. Alone, these are meaningless motes of dust. Together, they are the most valuable commodity on Earth. But capturing them is not enough. You have to arrange them. You must impose order upon the chaos before the sheer weight of the data crushes the systems meant to hold it. This is the story of how Google solved the problem of infinite scale. It is the story of a transition from a clumsy, brute force tool to an elegant, universal language. It is the story of FlumeJava and its metamorphosis into the open-source leviathan known as Apache Beam. To understand the architecture of modern data processing, one must first understand the terrifying logistics of the pipeline. Consider a city water system. You do not simply pour water from a reservoir into a kitchen sink. It must be pressurized, filtered, treated, diverted, and measured. In the world of computer science, this is the data pipeline. It is the invisible infrastructure that takes raw, dirty logs from servers and transforms them into clean, actionable intelligence. For years, this was a manual, agonizing process. Engineers were essentially carrying buckets of water by hand, writing distinct, brittle code for every single stage of the journey. They used a technology called MapReduce, a pioneering framework that allowed Google to index the internet. But by 2010, MapReduce had become a blunt instrument. It was powerful, yes, but it was rigid. It required engineers to think in low-level mechanical steps, forcing them to chain together complex operations with duct tape and hope. Enter the Programming Language Research Group at Google. It was here that figures like Craig Chambers and Ashish Raniwala began to look at the mess of MapReduce jobs clogging Google's clusters. They realized the problem was not the computation itself, but the abstraction. Engineers were spending too much time thinking about how to move the data, rather than what they wanted the data to do. They proposed a solution that felt less like engineering and more like philosophy. They called it FlumeJava. FlumeJava was not a new engine, it was a library, a layer of intelligence that sat above the grinding gears of the machinery. Think of it as a general contractor. You tell the contractor you want a house built. You do not tell the carpenter where to place every individual nail. FlumeJava allowed a developer to write code in standard Java that looked like it was processing a small list of items in memory, while in reality, the system was orchestrating massive parallel operations across thousands of machines. It introduced the concept of deferred evaluation. When a programmer wrote a command in FlumeJava, nothing happened immediately. The system waited. It watched the programmer build up a sequence of commands, recording them into an execution plan. Only when the final result was needed did FlumeJava look at the entire plan, optimize it, fuse steps together to save time, and then execute it with ruthless efficiency. The impact of this shift was seismic. Suddenly, the friction of writing data pipelines vanished. Internally at Google, the usage of FlumeJava exploded. It became the backbone of their billing systems, their ad revenue generation, and the generation of Google Maps tiles. It allowed a small team of developers to manage petabytes of data without needing to manage the underlying infrastructure. The efficiency gains were not just in developer time, but in actual computational resources. By optimizing the execution graph, FlumeJava saved Google untold millions in electricity and hardware costs. It turned the messy, tangled web of MapReduce jobs into sleek, optimized pipelines. However, a technology this powerful rarely stays hidden behind company walls forever. The industry was catching up. The Apache Hadoop ecosystem was growing. New players like Apache Spark were emerging, offering faster in-memory processing. Google realized that to maintain its dominance in the cloud, it could not simply hoard its secrets. It had to productize them. This led to the creation of Google Cloud Dataflow, a fully managed service based on the internal lessons of FlumeJava and a sister project known as Millwheel, which handled streaming data. But to make Dataflow the standard, Google had to make a move that surprised many. They donated the programming model and the software development kit to the Apache Software Foundation. They gave it a new name, Apache Beam. The name itself is a clever play on words, combining batch and stream. It promised a unified model where the distinction between processing a fixed file of historical data and processing a never-ending river of live user events would disappear. But the road to open source dominance is paved with controversy, and Apache Beam has walked a path fraught with legal, financial, and political tension. The legal questions surrounding such technologies often lurk in the fine print of intellectual property. When a company like Google releases a project to Apache, they do so under the Apache license, version 2.0. This is a permissive license, allowing anyone to use, modify, and distribute the software. However, the legal controversy often arises not from the code itself, but from the patents that may lurk beneath the algorithms. While Apache Beam is open, the most efficient runner for it, Google Cloud Dataflow, remains a proprietary service. This creates a subtle legal and operational bind. You own the code you write in Beam, yes. But to run it at the scale for which it was designed, you often find yourself contractually bound to the very entity that gave you the tool. It is a gift with strings attached, strings that lead directly back to the billing department of a hyperscaler. Financially, the implications are staggering. The model of Apache Beam encourages what is known as massive parallelism. It makes it trivially easy to spin up thousands of virtual CPUs to crunch numbers. For a developer, this is intoxicating. For a CFO, it is a nightmare. There are horror stories in Silicon Valley of startups implementing a Beam pipeline, misconfiguring a windowing function, and waking up the next morning to a cloud bill in the tens of thousands of dollars. The technology abstracts away the complexity, but it also abstracts away the cost awareness. Companies like Spotify and PayPal have navigated this by building strict cost monitoring teams. But for the uninitiated, the ease of FlumeJava's descendants can be a financial trap. The money made here is not just in the software sales, but in the compute cycles. Google Cloud, Amazon Web Services, and Microsoft Azure rake in billions of dollars annually from data processing workloads. Apache Beam is the shovel that allows them to feed coal into the furnace faster. The political landscape of this technology is a war of frameworks. When Google released Beam, the data world was already in love with Apache Spark. Spark was the darling of the open source community, championed by Databricks. Beam entered the room like an aristocrat claiming to know better. The political tension lies in the concept of the runner. Beam is designed to be portable. You write your pipeline once, and you can run it on Spark, on Flink, on Samza, or on Google Dataflow. This ambition created friction. The maintainers of Spark and Flink viewed Beam with suspicion. Was it a Trojan horse designed to commoditize their engines, turning their sophisticated platforms into mere execution details, while Google controlled the API? This tension persists. It is a battle for the hearts and minds of developers. If Google controls the interface, the language in which we describe data processing, they control the ecosystem, regardless of which engine is doing the grunt work underneath. Technically, the controversy is even more nuanced. It stems from the least common denominator problem. By trying to support every execution engine, Beam sometimes struggles to expose the specialized, high-performance features of a specific engine like Flink. It is the classic trade-off of portability versus performance. If you write a poem that must be translatable into every language, you lose the specific beauty of the original tongue. Critics argue that Beam adds a layer of overhead and complexity that isn't necessary if you are fully committed to a single platform like Spark. Yet, despite these shadows, the utility of the technology is undeniable. Major organizations have woven Beam into their digital nervous systems. Lyft uses it to process streams of location data, calculating pricing and estimated times of arrival in real time. The New York Times uses it to process the history of their readership, personalizing the news for millions of subscribers. eBay uses it to detect fraud, scanning millions of transactions for patterns that indicate theft. The scale of money protected and generated by these pipelines is in the trillions. It is the unseen logic that decides if your credit card transaction is approved or if your recommended song on a streaming service fits your mood. To understand why they use it, we must go deeper into the technical architecture, back to the ideas birthed in the FlumeJava paper. The core innovation is the P collection. In standard programming, you have a list or an array. In Beam, you have a P collection. It is an immutable, distributed dataset. You cannot change a P collection. You can only apply a P transform to it to create a new one. This immutability is crucial. It means that if a server crashes halfway through a job, the system knows exactly what data was lost and can recompute just that part without restarting the whole process. But the true genius, the aspect that moves this from a library to a language story, is the handling of time. In the old world, data was processed based on when it arrived at the machine. This is called processing time. But data is messy. A mobile phone loses signal in a tunnel. An event generated at 2 o'clock might not arrive at the server until 2:15. If you process data based on arrival time, your results are wrong. You are counting an event from the past as if it happened in the present. Beam, following the lead of the Millwheel paper, introduced the distinction between event time and processing time. This led to the invention of the watermark. The watermark is a heuristic, a mathematical guess. It is the system declaring, "I am confident that all data up to this point in time has arrived." It is not a guarantee, it is a probability. When the watermark passes, the system closes the window of time and calculates the result. If data arrives after the watermark, what engineers call late data, the system must decide whether to discard it or to issue a correction. This concept of windowing and triggers is what allows streaming systems to be accurate. It allows a financial institution to say, "This is the trading volume between 9 and 10 o'clock, even if some of the trade reports came in late due to network lag." Before this, streaming was an approximation. After Beam, streaming became accurate enough for banking. The architecture separates the what from the where. This is where the language story becomes paramount. In the early days, you wrote FlumeJava in Java. Today, Apache Beam supports Java, Python, Go, and others. This is achieved through a portability layer called the FN API. The pipeline you define is serialized into a language-agnostic format, a protocol buffer. It is then handed to a runner. The runner could be Apache Flink running on a cluster in a basement, or it could be Cloud Dataflow running in a Google data center. The runner spins up workers. These workers might be running a Python environment to execute your specific logic, even if the runner itself is written in Java. This cross-language capability is a technical marvel. It allows a data scientist who knows only Python to write a massive-scale pipeline that runs on a Java-based infrastructure without ever needing to understand the Java virtual machine. Let us look at the parallel do, or par-do, the most fundamental operation in this model. It is the equivalent of a map in MapReduce, but evolved. When a par-do executes, it processes elements independently. This independence is what allows the suspense of scale. You can have one machine running the par-do, or you can have 10,000. The code remains exactly the same. The system creates a directed acyclic graph, or DAG. This graph is the map of the pipeline. Before a single byte of data is processed, the optimizer analyzes this graph. It looks for inefficiencies. If you ask the system to filter a dataset and then map it, the optimizer might combine those steps into a single pass, saving the cost of writing the intermediate data to disk. This is known as fusion. In the days of MapReduce, fusion was manual labor. In the world of Beam and FlumeJava, it is automatic. Consider the related technologies that orbit this sun. We have Apache Kafka, the ingestion layer. Kafka is the fire hose, the pipe that brings the raw data into the building. Beam is the refinery that connects to that pipe. Then there is the storage layer, often technologies like BigQuery or Apache Cassandra. Beam writes the refined data into these warehouses. But Beam itself does not store data. It is transient. It is the motion, not the destination. This distinction is vital. Beam is purely a processing engine model. It does not hold state forever. It manages state in flight. There are unknown facts that illustrate the obsession required to build this. When the Google engineers were designing the windowing logic, they realized that the clock on a server is not a reliable source of truth. Clock skew, the tiny differences in timekeeping between machines, could destroy the accuracy of a pipeline. They had to rely on TrueTime, a Google infrastructure using atomic clocks and GPS satellites to keep server times synchronized to within milliseconds. While Apache Beam users outside Google do not always have access to TrueTime, the design of the watermark was necessitated by the realization that time in a distributed system is a hallucination. You cannot trust the clock on the wall. You can only trust the logical flow of events. The shift from FlumeJava to Beam also marked a shift in how we perceive the role of the data engineer. In the era of the raw MapReduce, the engineer was a mechanic, covered in grease, turning wrenches on the engine block. With Beam, the engineer is an architect. They design the flow, the shape of the data, the windows of time. They are removed from the metal. This abstraction is sophisticated, but it breeds a certain danger. When the abstraction leaks, when the pipeline fails, not because of logic but because of a memory leak in the underlying Java virtual machine or a serialization error in the Python pickler, the architect is suddenly forced to become a mechanic again, often without the tools or knowledge to fix the engine deep below. The legacy of FlumeJava is not just in the code, it is in the standard it set. It proved that you could have high-level code and high-performance execution. It killed the Lambda architecture. The Lambda architecture was a popular design pattern where companies maintained two separate systems: a slow, accurate batch system and a fast, inaccurate streaming system. It was redundant and painful. Beam proved that with the right model, using event time, watermarks and triggers, you could have a single system that was both fast and accurate. You could run the same code on historical logs and live feeds. This unification saved the industry billions of hours of development time. As we look at the graph of a running pipeline, watching the numbers tick up 1 million records, 10 million, 1 billion, we are watching the pulse of the modern world. Every swipe of a credit card, every stream of a video, every GPS signal is flowing through these pipes. The technology that began as a research paper by Craig Chambers and his team, aiming to make life easier for a few hundred Google engineers, now underpins the digital reality of the entire planet. It is a story of abstraction, of hiding the brutal complexity of the machine behind a veil of elegant logic. But never forget that behind the clean lines of the Java or Python code, the furnaces of the data centers are burning hot, consuming electricity and capital in a relentless drive to process the world, one event at a time. The pipeline never stops, it waits for no one. And in the silence of the server room, the watermark moves forward, marking the passage of time in a world that has forgotten how to wait.